Hey listeners, it's Paul Andriola here. Why not join our community at Small Cap Discoveries, where we offer our members direct access to some of the best microcap investment opportunities available. Our members are getting access to premium microcap financings, research reports, and direct access to management. Sign up today at www.smallcapdiscoveries.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. We have CEO Doug Janzen from Aequus Pharmaceuticals. Aequus trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol AQS and on the OTC under AQS-TSX.V. The company is trading at 12 cents with roughly 132 million shares outstanding, or about a $16 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andriola.
Hey, great. Thanks, Trevor. Very happy to have Doug with us today. Both Trevor and I have had a number of discussions with Doug in the past. Doug runs Aequus Pharma, which is a specialty pharma company, which we've come to, learn as much as we can about. I know a number of our listeners are shareholders of the company. Both Trevor and I are shareholders of the company, so we're happy to have Doug here, and get up to speed. And for those that are sort of new to the story, obviously hear it for the first time. So Doug, thanks for joining us. And I understand you're going to start a presentation here.
Yes. Thanks, guys. As we kind of page past the forward-looking statements, Trevor, if you track along, I'm on slide 3. So Aequus, up to this point in our history, has been Canadian focused. We've built out, a commercial business in Canada. Most of our products are in the eye care space, so ophthalmology and optometry, and we have another product that's in post-transplant. The drug is tacrolimus, which prevents organ rejection in folks who've had organ transplant. The business started, from a real kind of focus around launching commercial products that we didn't have to, go out and compete and acquire assets. So we started off by co-promoting assets for Sandoz, and we continue to still work with Sandoz. We've extended our relationship and expanded it a number of times, and they're our main partner in Canada. The kind of the rationale around looking for co-promote assets was that at the time we were starting the business in 2015, if you recall, that was in the middle of the Valiant Concordia especially pharma bubble that saw companies acquiring assets at higher and higher EBITDA multiples, and eventually the whole thing collapsed sometime in early 2015. We kind of looked at that charred landscape and thought that there was a better way to build out a business without having to risk that much capital, and that's something that we've been doing at Aequus. We're based in Vancouver. The bulk of my staff is Ontario and Quebec based, because that's where the main impetus of the sales force is in central Canada. And we're being still to this day heavily reliant on building partnerships with people who can add either products to our bag or other type of assets that we're interested in developing. On slide 4, we've done a number of transactions in our history. Like I said, we're building our business not through acquisition, but through partnerships. Not every partnership works out. For example, I see Santen on this slide. Santen is a large global eye care space based out of Japan. We partnered with them a few years ago, but their product never made it to the Canadian market. So that's one challenge to the business. But if you look to the right of this slide, we now have 4 products launched and on market in Canada, with a 5th in under Health Canada review. We're excited about additional products, not just for Canada, but potentially for the US, that we're negotiating right now around different types of eye care disorders. Our focus by and large is ophthalmology and optometry, and that is going to remain the focus going forward. If you look at our pipeline of products, this is slide 5. We now have prescription products on the market in Canada and a number of over-the-counter dry eye products in Canada. And as I mentioned on the top right of that slide, the Zymed preservative-free product That's being submitted to Health Canada and is currently undergoing review. We'd expect approval here before the end of the summer, but with timelines being impacted by COVID, from the regulators over the last year and a half, we're pleased to say the program is progressing through Health Canada review, but a specific date, we don't have that right now. Canada is a big country. If you go to slide 6, by geography, it is a large country, but by population density, pretty well 80% of all Canadians live, in 5 major urban centers. So what that means is it's a useful concentration of patients and customers in a few metro areas. So our sales force is heavily, focused on Ontario, Quebec, BC, and Alberta, and then that's where the main density of population is, and the main density of clinicians. It's a real efficient, despite the large country, it's a real efficient sales force. And one thing that we found over the years is, and I think listeners can appreciate it, Wall Street didn't wake up today wondering where that next $10 million Canadian product is going to come from. We do. So it's an opportunity where there's not a ton of competition looking to build revenue streams in Canada from kind of a co-promote partnership perspective. Most of the Canadian landscape is dominated by, the Canadian arms of U.S. or global pharma companies, and this type of, especially pharma model, is not really in their kind of business mandate. So competition is modest, as far as comparables to where we're at, and it's kind of our goal to really take the strong foundation that we're on and leverage that and expand into other markets, which I'll talk about. Slide 7, this Titan is a glaucoma drug. It treats IOP and after glaucoma surgery, and patients are on the product for life. We started launching this on behalf of Sandoz in 2018. We've steadily grown market share, taking share away from much bigger players like Alcon and others, and we continue to grow revenues there. Our Q4 was a record quarter of revenues, which we published earlier this year. Q1 was a little bit softer, mostly because of COVID lockdowns, but Q2, which we'll be reporting here in the next few weeks, Q2 was very strong, and the business is real close to breaking even operationally just from our revenues here in Canada. The company's been investing in the regulatory process and inventory for the preservative-free Zymed, which we'll be launching later this year. We've also been doing a fair amount of investment in regulatory diligence around additional products. So we're getting really close on announcing a new program, eye care program again, so it fits right into our strong spot for North American rights. So that's something that takes us out of Canada and gives us a chance to, in a limited way, launch a product into the U.S. or develop and then launch a product into the U.S. And we think really starts to help our story evolve from just Canadian only focus, but to be an eye care company focused on across North America. Tacrolimus IR, bit of a outlier in our portfolio, but it's just such a great market for this product. This is the anti-organ rejection post-transplant drug that patients will be taking for the rest of their lives after kidney or liver or lung transplants. Sandoz has been, Novartis Group and Sandoz have been a leader in transplant for decades, and this product, we cover all of Canada with a really small sales footprint here for tacrolimus, and it's revenues are good, and it's a really high margin business for us. We're working with Sandoz around further expanding this relationship once again to launch a once a day version of tacrolimus that's soon to be available in Canada. So that's another positive potential revenue generator for us here before the end of the year. Our two most recent launches are the two dry eye disease products. One nice thing about eye care that maybe not everyone appreciates, but I can walk you through it. most, like in eye care, a large portion of the eye care market is over the counter. So when it comes to prescription products, you're really limited to how you sell those products to physicians and to payers. There's a lot of ethical, guidelines and promotional efforts, are really focused on detailing products and providing samples. When it comes to over-the-counter products, things that you'll sell to optometrists and the laser vision correction, kind of industry, those are all for-profit businesses, and you can get a lot more creative as to how you're going to generate revenues in those spaces. So you can do, white label, where you allow, big eye care franchises to label the products under their own name, and Aequus would then split revenues with them in more of a partnership model. That something you could never do with surgeons and ophthalmologists and things in the prescription world. So there's a lot of really interesting business-to-business relationships that we've been working on, and we've talked about these for the last few quarters, but we're now finally close to having our first ones to announce, where you'll see us partnering with some of the big aggregators, the big optometry chains and others to find solutions that would generate new revenue streams for them, but would allow us to access large numbers of optometrists and their patients. So it's definitely a more entrepreneurial kind of part that's available in eye care that you don't see in normal prescription areas. The commercial strategy, again, quickly, we want to get our costs back from launching a product, whether it's implants or new dry eye products. We want to kind of quickly get that sunk cost back, and then continue to promote and generate relationships with buyers in the space and advance new products. So we're constantly on the lookout for new eye care products, both prescription and non-prescription. The bringing new products to Canada usually requires a regulatory step. Even though products would be approved in the US or Europe, God bless Health Canada, we still have our own regulators that we have to go deal with, despite these programs being successful and well known elsewhere. And over the years, we've steadily progressed our relationships with Health Canada, and our knowledge and experience and scar tissue around getting assets through the regulatory process here. So both the Evolve products we got approved last year successfully on our own, and as I mentioned earlier, the Zymed preservative-free glaucoma drug is now progressing through Health Canada review, and we expect to get news from that later this summer if their timelines still are on pace. Our main success factors today is around selling, sales effectiveness, both online selling. We made a real investment in building online commercial platform that not just we use, but as we do white label transactions with some of the big optometry buying groups, we can serve as their online platform as well. It's like many industries, optometry is slowly moving to kind of the new normal, which is online e-commerce, and we've been working as a partner to help select clinics that we're building partnerships with to provide them that infrastructure. As it relates to this year for tacrolimus, sales continue to be strong. That program that drug continues to be the generic of choice for post-transplant organ rejection, and things are moving smoothly there. And then with Vistitin, we continue to take market share away from Lumigan, and we're keep hammering away at that, and I think people are going to be pleased with the growth they're going to see here as we really report our Q2 numbers. About a year and a half ago, we signed a deal with a UK-based eye care company called Medicom. Medicom has a number of preservative-free dry eye products and other optometry and ophthalmology products that they've launched across Europe. We've partnered with them for Canada and have now have launched two of their products and are in having our third being reviewed by Health Canada. The relationship with Medicom is contemplated jointly launching products in the U.S., but I think our first offering in the U.S. will be something that we'll be announcing via a separate partnership. We've always been interested in orphan drug opportunities in the U.S. For those of you who aren't familiar, orphan drug designation is given, was a regulatory pathway set up by FDA to incent drug developers to find therapies for small market products and usually rare diseases or pediatric diseases. And there's a number of incentives to developers like Aequus to go look at those indications. There's a speedier regulatory review process. There's there's really strong pricing for orphan drugs as far as getting reimbursement in the U.S. And there's priority vouchers and priority review kind of licenses that have real value in the marketplace. There's been a number of priority review vouchers that have been sold for in excess of 100, up to high as $300 million in the past. So developing an orphan product is there's a lot of real advantages to do that. And for Aequus, we're really we're starting to not starting, we're hopefully getting close to being able to announce the first orphan eye care product partnership for the business that we think is really going to be attractive, not just to investors, but open up other opportunities for us in the U.S. That's a bit of a segue to slide number 14, which is talking about Zymed and how Aequus and Medicom have been discussing U.S. rights to that program, which would introduce a preservative-free prescription product into the U.S. And I think the broader message is we continue to try to find measured ways to enter the U.S. market, ones that don't take a huge amount of infrastructure or a huge amount of capex, but allow us to grow the business, not just from building revenue $1 million, $2 million at a time in the Canadian marketplace, but start advancing assets that can do 50 to 100 million in revenue over over a time frame. And orphan drugs are certainly a big part of our strategy as we're going forward. With that, I think that's the end of the presentation that we have. Happy to take questions, but just as a kind of closing, the business is stable in Canada. We're in front of clinicians every day. We have our sales folks are doing, we're essentially seeing about 40 ophthalmologists a day and about the same number of optometrists every day. And as you can appreciate, an ophthalmologist in Toronto, goes to the same conferences, has the same meetings as one in New York, as one in LA, as one in Berlin or London. That level of specialty is kind of, they all connect and they all talk with each other. And we've been, even though for our next products we're looking not just in Canada, our Canadian clinicians have really been helpful to us to identify what do they need in their practice next, or what products do they see that are interesting. And we've been able to really leverage those relationships, not just to generate revenue in Canada, but to help us diligence opportunities outside of Canada. And that's the next phase for Aequus, and for our investors as we start to, not just look at assets external to Canada, but execute on them and develop them. And I think that'll be a big part of our story going forward. So with that, I will throw it over to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Doug. A question that right sort of top of mind is the pipeline you have right now, without going out into any further new deals. What's the estimated peak sales of the pipeline as is?
Including Zymed PF that's under Health Canada review, the current portfolio assets, we think we can grow to kind of that $8 to $10 million Canadian revenue level. Our business is profitable around kind of a 3.5 to 4 million in revenue. But let's be clear, it's nice to have a stable business, but our goal with Aequus, when we formed it, I'm the largest shareholder. Our goal is not to have an $8 million revenue business and then sit on our hands and say, well, we've done it. It's we're looking to grow our revenues materially, and not necessarily through acquisition, but certainly through partnerships.
And look, you touched on it a little bit, but give us a better sense of how you guys go and actually find deals. Like, how do you go and find a new product that you want to, either partner on or work with?
Because we're so focused on the eye care space, we're pretty, we keep up, with the industry, across North America and Europe. Each of our salespeople are specialists in eye care, and they're having 10 to 12 conversations a day with clinicians. So we're constantly asking what's in development, what's new, what's generating interest, in people's minds. Often these are programs that are being developed in the US or Europe, with no, the Canadian market is not a priority to the developers. It's such a small market, compared to Asia, Europe, or the US. So when we see assets being developed by companies that don't have Canadian infrastructure, that our clinicians or that our customers have identified as being, hey, this could be useful in my practice, I'd like to learn more about it. That's kind of our starting point. That's where we jump off and approach businesses and start to have dialogue around, what are they doing with Canadian rights, and do they have a strategy there? For example, the trend to preservative-free eye drops is something that started just a few years ago. And I still recall, meeting with a Toronto-based ophthalmologist who said, if you could give me a glaucoma med that was in a preservative-free multi-dose bottle, I would switch all my patients to that from the current drops. So, we kind of, that was one of those type of meetings where someone gave us, a direct kind of request. And that's what led us to the Medicom deal. So, we started to look around the world who was making preservative-free eye drops for specific diseases and conditions. And, 6 months later, we signed our first deal with Medicom, and, been growing that relationship. So that's a really good example how, a Canadian clinician led us to a deal with a European developer that, that's then come back and has led to us having three additional products, here in Canada.
And sort of give us a better idea of what does a deal look like? What do you want to, one of these partnerships to look like for Aequus?
Normally at this point in our evolution, we're looking not to have to put a lot of CapEx or upfront payments. We'd be looking for the Canadian commercial rights. We'd be funding the Health Canada regulatory work, and then we'd fund commercial efforts to develop it, to not just the products developed, to get it approved in Canada, and then to launch into marketing and launch. So that, to date, most of our expenses are around Canadian regulatory, buying inventory, getting the marketing and the branding all set up, and then all the launch costs and promotion costs. That's where most of our cost base is happening today. As we think about orphan products in the US, and those type of transactions will look different, because we'd be willing to risk more capital on the early stage development side of it. They're just such lucrative assets, and the capital markets in the US has always, for years, is there's investors who specifically look for orphan drugs, just because of the high pricing and the more abbreviated regulatory pathway. So in that scenario, we're willing to start risking more capital, and as those relationships play out, you'll see that we're still taking measured steps around capital spend, but we're willing to take bigger risk for the because those rewards are so much bigger. A typical orphan product would do 60 to 100 million a year in sales, whereas we're that's not there's not a lot of Canadian products that would do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with a product, give us a sense of like how does the revenue break down when you partner? Do you get a set percentage? Do you get is it a set nominal dollar amount per sale, or how does the revenue break down with the partnership?
Yeah, it's like the simplest deals are ones where you just 50-50 split net revenues. So that's pretty, I think that's, the Sandoz relationship is a pretty good example of that. They provide the product, we provide the effort to sell it, and then we share, net revenues. The relationship with Medicom is a little bit different. There's minimum order quantities and different things. But again, the model that we start with is how do you split it, and from that you can then adjust terms. But the end goal usually is to split net revenues with a partner. As we look at things more that have more development timelines, like for an orphan drugs, in that case they would look a little bit more like traditional partnerships where there's a payment for development and then some milestones and royalties that would be earned downstream. So that would I think that's a more typical kind of commercial development agreement style, and again we'd be looking to not pay large upfront payments, but instead put the money to work to move the asset and de-risk the program.
Mm-hmm. How do we take a bit of a step back, and so many of these deals are, a company like this is really going to be determined, or the success is going to be determined by the people that are running the business. Maybe let's hear more about who Doug Janzen is and where you came from. I think lots to tell here. What can you say?
Yeah, I'm a scientist by training, but I was a shitty scientist. So I got into finance. I was able to get through university and get my degree, but I was much more interested in the capital markets, and I was really interested in that intersection between science and money. So I got into investment banking and progressed my career through, I was in Toronto for a number of years. I set up the healthcare practice at Cormark, and really got to understand the business of science and capital allocation around how that works for biotech companies. I joined a company called Cardiome that at the time I joined was a $60 million market cap. We built that over $1 billion at its height. Did some of the biggest licenses in Canadian history. Got the products approved in Europe and Asia and Canada, and I kind of joke, made pretty well every mistake you could make in biotech, and then learned how to fix a lot of them. So after the Merck deal with Cardiome, I kind of started to set up other businesses, help entrepreneurs open with business ideas, and I was a early investor in AbCellera, earlier investor in Precision Nanosys, and a number of really successful Canadian biotech stories that I was on the boards of and helped start, and was able to make good returns. With Aequus, we started Aequus off of a theory that there was a better way to build revenue businesses than competing against your peers to see who could pay the most to acquire them, and that's kind of what the Valley and Concordia era was, and that's how we got Aequus started. And certainly it's it's been a slow starting point. When you're starting at zero, it takes a while to build that up. But now if we can double revenues, the next 2-3 years, the cost side of the business are really kind of covered by that operational work, and it allows us to take bigger bets, or take bets on opportunities that could have a much bigger payday. And that's really where that's really where our focus has been here this year, and certainly picking that's really accelerated over the last 2 quarters as we've been negotiating these larger transaction or potential transactions.
I mean, you've been at it for years. You've seen the cycles in life sciences and biotech. Where do you think we are? Obviously, COVID has brought another, light back onto the life science sector. But just taking a sort of a 64,000 foot look at things, where are we in the life science space right now?
So COVID allowed a whole bunch of capital to get thrown at biotech companies, and it allowed a much smaller group of biotech companies to really, take advantage of the regulatory need to advance assets into the marketplace much faster than it normally would. I think how that capital came into a lot of companies. We'll see how productive that's going to be. It's sometimes you give a business money that they weren't expecting. They don't necessarily have great ideas for it. I think broader, we saw what the life sciences community of Canada and Europe was able to accomplish in 6 months. We have, it was pretty amazing. And some of those technologies that were, being run independently in private businesses or undercapitalized businesses, have been able to now, make their own destiny going forward. So I think about, in the U.S., Moderna. Moderna was a successful business, but was still reliant on partners and things to move its assets. Now, Moderna doesn't even rely on anybody. They have scale and the scope and the revenue to kind of self-actualize their future. I think in Canada, Solar is a great example of that. Still private business, through up until earlier this year, and their ability now not just to drive their own platform, but to do it at whatever speed they choose, not at a partner's speed. They can go self-actualize. So I think there's a number of really important technologies that got validated during COVID, and the whole mRNA kind of approach to different diseases is that's something that's not going away. Like that's a new tool in the toolbox, and it's a real powerful one. And I think there'll continue to be like the discoveries and the advances in science. Again, people really saw the importance of it, and a lot of capital has shown up in those places. So I think that's an exciting component. The other side of that is we have a whole bunch of governments who are essentially bankrupt. So drug pricing, I think drug pricing is something that it's been under pressure, especially in Canada, forever. For us, we don't have a high price product, so our products in Canada, so we're not as at risk as some of the higher price prescription products that treat a lot of Canadians. And it's the reason why we're really looking, we're not just looking, we're really active in reviewing opportunities in the orphan drug space. It's pricing is high in those diseases. Usually the unmet medical need is high, and it doesn't take a huge sales infrastructure to sell different types of orphan diseases, especially the rare genetic disorders. You could cover all of the U.S. with 5 or 6 medical liaisons, which is pretty affordable compared to putting out a 1,000-person sales force to sell a cholesterol drug or something like that. So we've we've thought that was a good opportunity for years. We just never had at first the bandwidth, because we were busy building the phase 1 of Aequus, the thing that the commercial side that we have today. And it's been here only in the last kind of 2 quarters that we've really been able to start reviewing opportunities in the orphan space, not necessarily in Canada, and we think that's the next leg of our growth.
How do you see COVID impacting your business? Maybe sort of from an operational basis, and just opportunists. Are there opportunities that'll develop because of COVID? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so COVID-1, so our first kind of our first wave of COVID last year, everything in Canada shut down. So, our sales force, instead of, driving to 8 different doctor's offices a day, dropping off, donuts and samples, they were all at home making online calls, doing video calls, just like everyone else. So we actually saw during that time frame, revenues and margins increased. So, and again, it's probably just the products that we sell in Canada today. If you're a glaucoma patient, you don't take your glaucoma med, you're at risk of losing your eyesight. So people are motivated to take that. And if you're a transplant patient, post-transplant, you don't take your anti-organ rejection drugs, you're at risk of losing your life. So those customers, our customer base was still motivated to get products, but we didn't have nearly the same cost associated with the sales force. So that was a one-time event that, kind of has turned into not just being one time, because the whole industry learned how to sell online. And, every single retail business on the planet is being revolutionized by online sales. In the drug world, that hadn't really happened. It was still people driving around, dropping off samples kind of concepts. So the trend to online sales is something that, has begun, especially for kind of mature products like what we're selling into Canada. There's not a lot of education to a physician how to use Vistitin, or any of the, the Matapros-like molecules for glaucoma. So that's been a trend that's really, was well overdue to get started, for people to get their prescriptions filled online and things like that. What it means to a company like Aequus is, in the olden days, you'd want to compete for shelf space at Walmarts and Walgreens and things like that. And the drugstores would charge you just huge amounts of money to have optimal shelf space. That whole kind of, with online sales, you can find a lot of different ways to drive customers and, eyeballs to your site. And it's something that, our Chief Commercial Officer, Grant Larson, is something that he's done for a long time in the eye care space. So COVID-1 opened up, online sales and, a different model, or at least a somewhat different model for how drug sales could occur. COVID-2, what that saw is clinicians whose offices have been shut for most of the previous year. Whether you're, we all heard stories about elective surgeries being canceled, for months. Well, there's a surgeon on the other side of that decision who's not getting paid for months. Optometrists, essentially optometrists run retail businesses, often in shopping malls and things like that. You'll see their stores or storefronts, downtown Vancouver. Those businesses were shuttered too. So during COVID-2, like the second wave, it was the lockdown wasn't as severe, but industry, physicians, optometrists, eye care professionals, they were really focused on trying to make their revenues back. So, seeing as many patients, doing as many procedures as possible. And they were also looking for other revenue sources. So it was just good timing for us. So that's when we, were launching our Evolve products, going to physicians and optometrists with like a e-commerce, business solution and potential partnerships with them, and finding them new revenue streams from launching preservative-free derived products. It was an audience that was really focused on generating revenues. And when it comes to all the Evolve line of products and our OTC products, for those we approach optometrists with kind of that partnership model in place as well. Like how do we help you make money and while serving your patients with these products? And that's something that's certainly ears and doors are wide open when you can introduce a new revenue stream and to a clinic.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, so you had your balance sheet right now. You guys raised a little bit of money in the last little while. I think there's a financing done at 15 cents. You had some warrants that were outstanding that were exercised. Give us a sense of your sort of go forward capital requirements, if anything. Do you think you have enough money to sort of take care of the business? Subject to, of course, any new deals that surface. How do you look at your balance sheet right now?
Yeah, we've like you've seen our Q4 numbers, operational burn is really low for the business. So, we're not, one of our goals was to get to a position where, we could access capital when it was opportunistic, as opposed to when you're about to go out and run out of money. And kind of, that way you could take advantage of, strong markets and avoid weak markets if they appear. Going forward, we're still fairly cautious on capital allocation. I've invested in Aequus and provided capital a number of times, and I'd continue to do that, especially around larger opportunities. So if we get into the business of developing an orphan product, there's not a lot of costs in the first 2 years, but as you get 3 years out, the thesis is not only would the value of the asset would have grown, but you're going to need to be able to access capital to help get it over the finish line. So that's one that is another reason why we're so attracted to those type of programs, because of the the clear advantages on timing and on things like vouchers that you can monetize that come along with them. So I think not a lot of changes in the next 3 to 4 months to from the last 3 or 4 about how we manage the business and how we deploy capital. But as we're going forward, we think we want to evolve the business into a company that can attract institutional money in the U.S. and allow us to advance more valuable assets forward. So that's the next kind of big goal for myself and for the business.
Okay, you stated earlier, I think you're the largest shareholder. Give us a sense of what percentage is owned by, I guess, you, management, and just in general, the makeup of the shareholder base.
Yeah, I own over 10%. I think I'm right around 12% of the business. I would be, I'll continue to participate, both in our market when I'm not blacked out, and in any financings I'd consider leading if they're required in the future. Shareholder base is a mix of U.S. and Canadian investors, by and large, sophisticated retail investors, all the way through to just general retail investors. We have a large shareholder base in Germany, and retail base, and I think our business is I think our business would benefit as we start to generate interest more from we're looking to now starting to add healthcare funds to the mix. We have 2 Canadian funds who've been investors, but we're as we look at product opportunities, one of the things we really kind of think about a lot is does this allow us to introduce the business and access new sources of capital and new kind of new value drivers, and that's something that we're really hoping to broaden the tent here in the back half of this year.
This is a pretty common question that always gets asked, but what keeps you up at night with Aequus? What challenges do you still foresee going forward?
None of it keeps us up, but it's just that's everything goes a little bit slower than you hope, especially when you're dealing with regulators. So it's just that general. You want to move the ball every day, and certainly like every week you feel like you've moved the ball, but there'll be days where kind of like every meeting you have, someone's introducing the reason why something's going to go a little bit slower than you want it to. So that's not so much with Aequus. I've been running biotech companies for the last 20 some years, and that's just kind of the industry. You gotta be determined. You got to grind things through because you don't control all the outcomes. But the real thing that we get excited about is what the current platform can do, and then more importantly, what it can do is if we bolt on another really another exciting product that can capture the attention of a broader audience. At the start of the conversation, I said Wall Street didn't wake up wondering where the next $10 million Canadian eye care product's going to come from.
Sure.
We do, but in the same way, Wall Street didn't wake up wondering where that next $16 million Canadian public biotech company is going to show up next, right? So,
Right.
And so we've allowed we've created this platform to allow us to have a stable business that can interact with payers and clinicians on a daily basis and review assets. And now we're really we're getting more aggressive, and I think part of it is because of the capital that all came into the space around COVID, and some of those companies for which we were personally big investors in, that we're more aggressive around how we want to build the business, and how specifically I'd like to deploy capital and really drive this next phase of growth for Aequus.
Where do you hope to see Aequus in 5 years? What do you see?
I'd like to have a portfolio of products spanning North America, both prescription products, over the counter, and we'd love to have a profitable, like if we're looking at 5 years, products, a suite of 2 or 3 really exciting products entering the market or already on the market in the US. I think that platform of being a North American focused eye care company that is not tied just to innovative medicines like the big pharma players do, but allow us to continue to do co-promotions in regions like Europe, Canada, around assets, and just continue to build out that presence in ophthalmology and optometry. That's where we want to see the business grow to.
And what do you think investors should, apart from the standard stuff like revenues and earnings and things like that, what other metrics or other things should investors keep an eye on to sort of show that you're executing on that, sort of call it 5-year plan?
I think as we're developing products, as we license in products, are they progressing through the regulatory process? Are they like for our current roster, it would be, are they progressing through regulatory process? Are they getting to market? And then when they're on market, are they getting reimbursed? And then when they're reimbursed, are they generating revenues, or are they generating to forecast? As you look into something on more on the development side, like for a orphan eye disease product, that would be more typical clinical milestones as you move the asset down through phase 1, 2 into a registration kind of program. So that would be much more typical development, biotech development kind of milestones that investors would be checking the box as they're met.
Perfect. I mean, is there anything we missed? Like I always try to find out what gets the CEO the most excited about their business. Is there something that I should have asked that I didn't, that would sort of give us a good idea of what you, Doug Janzen, is most excited about Aequus?
Like the one, I guess, asset, you make air quotes around that. The one asset the company has that it's hard for people to value. It's the relationships. It's the relationships we have with healthcare providers. We talk to some of the smartest eye care professionals in North America on a daily basis, and we bounce ideas off of them. We have a network of partnerships with Medicom in Europe, with Sandoz global business, that shows us ideas out of their pipeline, so, like off of their roster. Sorry, pipeline's probably the wrong state, but off of their roster, that dealing with smart people who really know their own businesses often leads to smart transactions. So that's the part that is exciting to me. I've been able to sit on that kind of interface where science meets money, and in this case we're taking products and commercializing them, so we're directly part of that, the business side of it all, and we're able to service, like I said, some of the brightest clinicians on the planet, and take advantage of their time and their relationships and their kind of vision around what products are needed next for their patients, or what products for pediatric blindness diseases might successfully treat we really rely on that. Like our customer base is more than that. They're kind of our advisor base at the same time. So that's something that always enjoy talking to passionate professionals about what they're doing, about their careers, and it's something that is valuable that we can't really show in the balance sheet. It certainly helped lead to the products that we have.
Yeah, I think it's the intangibles that a lot of people will miss in business like this, just like you mentioned. Doug, sort of we're about to wrap up, and what we always like to do is just give the presenter an opportunity just to give a parting message. Any key takeaway you want our investors to walk away with today?
Yeah, like I think the business has showed fairly steady growth over the last 4 to 6 quarters, and if you kind of average them out, you're going to continue to see that here with Q2, and we expect a strong end to the year. We've got we have 2 new products that we launched earlier this year that continue to gain acceptance and grow revenue, and we have a third that we hope to have Exit Health Canada with an approval later this year as well. So that business that Aequus has been and is today continues to grow and execute. And then, as I kind of alluded to today, we hope to add, some exciting products around that base business and ones that have, bigger opportunity in larger territories and have a lot of, attractive incentives and features, for us to be advancing them along, in partnerships and that are focused more in the U.S. than just Canada.
Mm-hmm. Great. Perfect. Well, this has been great. Always love to catch up and get a good sort of an update here. If somebody wants more information, how do they get it? Website, email address, where should they go?
Yeah, the website is, Aequus Pharma. The best way is on the site, and we have an info link, and for that info, I receive those emails. Myself and our chief commercial officer receive those emails, and we can follow up from there.
Perfect. Well, this has been great, Doug. Thank you so much. We've been speaking to Doug Janzen, CEO of Aequus Pharma. Apart from running Aequus, I also know Doug to be one of the most successful, certainly Canadian investors in life sciences. So this is an opportunity to really bet on somebody who's knows the lay of the land, has done a great job in putting together a business in a pretty challenging market. So Doug, thank you so much for joining us today, and we certainly look forward to catching up in the future.
Thank you, guys.